of our love. You also see the different measure of our love. And notice in chapter 13, verse 34, Jesus says, "As I have loved you, so also you are to love one another." So what's the measure of our love? According to Jesus, the measure of our love is the love with which we've been loved by Jesus. So it's a new measure, and it's new because Jesus didn't he existed. He wasn't on the scene when Leviticus was written, okay? He was up there in heaven at the right hand of God. And yet, later on, he comes to earth, has a baby, he grows in wisdom and stature, and then he manifests in his own person what it looks like to love people with divine and perfect love. And because of that visible example, we now have in the person of Jesus Christ a living example of what it means to love people with God's love. And we could sit here all morning and talk about specific, tangible, concrete ways that Jesus loved people all throughout the Gospels, and it would probably be a really fruitful enterprise. But one of the things, if you're studying the Scriptures, that you want to do in order to answer questions that you're asking of the text is to look in the immediate context. You want to say, is there anything around this text that answers the question, the newness of the measure of our love? Is there anything around here that shows me what it means to love like Jesus loved? And there is. If you'll go back a few verses and start in John chapter 13, verse 1, you've got a perfect example of what it means to love like Jesus loved. So let's read John 13, starting in verse 1, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, before the feast of the Passover, when Jesus knew that his hour had come to depart out of the world to the Father, so Jesus knows I'm about to go to the cross. Having loved his own who were in the world, he loved them to the end. So you know we're about to get a practical manifestation of love. Skip down to chapter 13, verse 4. The second half of that verse, it says that he laid aside his outer garments, and taking a towel, he tied it around his waist. Verse 5, then he poured water into a basin, and get this, and he began to wash the disciples' feet and to wipe them with the towel that was around him. Skip down to verse 12. When he had washed their feet and put on his outer garments, he resumed his place at the head of the table. And he said to them, "Do you understand what I have done to you?" Verse 13, "You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am." Now, that's huge right there. Some people say Jesus didn't think of himself as God. They haven't read the Gospel of John. Jesus unflinchingly assumes the title of divinity. I am the Lord. I am your teacher. I am the rabbi. And I don't hesitate to receive that title. This is incredible privilege and incredible position. If anyone's going to be having their feet washed, it doesn't need to be Peter. If anyone's having their feet washed, it should be Jesus. You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right. If I then, verse 14, your Lord and teacher have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet, for I've given you an example that you should also do as I have done to you. So do you see that language?